Marcovaldo, or The Seasons in the City by Italo Calvino. Winter 16. Marcovaldo at the supermarket. At 6 in the evening, the city fell into the hands of the consumers. All during the day, the big occupation of the productive public was to produce. They produced consumer goods. At a certain hour, as if a switch had been thrown, they stopped production, and away they were all off to consume. Every day an impetuous flowering barely had time to blossom inside the lighted shop windows, the red salamis to hang, the towers of porcelain dishes to rise to the ceiling, the rolls of fabric to unfurl folds like peacocks' tails, when lo! The consuming throng burst in, to dismantle, to gnaw, to grope, to plunder. An uninterrupted line wound along all the sidewalks and under the arcades, extended through the glass doors of the shops to all the counters, nudged onwards by each individual's elbows in the ribs of the next, like the steady throb of pistons. Consume! And they touched the goods and put them back and picked them up again and tore them from another's hands. Consume! And they forced the pale sales ladies to display on the counter linen and more linen. Consume! And the spools of colored string spun like tops. The sheets of flowered paper fluttered their wings, enfolding purchases in little packages, and the little packages in big packages, bound each with its butterfly knot. And off went packages and bundles and wallets and bags that whirled around the cashier's desk in a clutter, hands digging into pocketbooks seeking change purses, and fingers rummaging in change purses for coins, and down below, in a forest of alien legs and hems of overcoats, children no longer held by the hand but became lost and started crying. One of these evenings, Marcovaldo was taking his family out for a walk. Since they had no money, their entertainment was to watch others go shopping. For the more money circulates, the more those without any can hope. Sooner or later, a bit of it will come into my pockets. But on the contrary, Marcovaldo's wages, because they were scant and the family was large, and there were installments and debts to be paid, flowed away the moment he collected them. Anyhow, watching was always lovely, especially if you took a turn around the supermarket. This was a self-service supermarket. It provided those carts like iron baskets on wheels, and each customer pushed his cart along, filling it with every sort of delicacy. Marcovaldo, on entering, also took a cart. His wife, another, and his 4 children took one each. And so they marched in procession, their carts before them, among counters piled high with mountains of good things to eat, pointing out to one another the salamis and the cheeses, naming them as if in a crowd they had recognized the faces of friends, or acquaintances anyway. "Papa, can we take this at least?" the children asked every minute. "No! Hands off! Mustn't touch!" Marcovaldo said, remembering that at the end of this stroll the checkout girl was waiting to total up the sum. "Then why is that lady taking one?" they insisted, seeing all these good housewives who, having come in to buy only a few carrots and a bunch of celery, couldn't resist the sight of a pyramid of jars, and plonk, 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 with a partly absent and partly resigned movement, they sent cans of tomatoes, peaches, anchovies thudding into their carts. In other words, if your cart is empty and the others are full, you can hold out only so long. Then you're overwhelmed by envy, heartbreak, and you can't stand it. So Marcovaldo, having told his wife and children not to touch anything, made a rapid turn at one of the intersections, eluded his family's gaze, and having taken a box of dates from a shelf, put it in his cart. He wanted only to experience the pleasure of pushing it around for 10 minutes, displaying his purchases like everyone else, and then replace it where he had taken it. This box, plus a red bottle of ketchup, and a package of coffee, and a blue pack of spaghetti. Marcovaldo was sure that, restraining himself for at least a quarter of an hour, and without spending a cent, he could savor the joy of those who know how to choose the product. But if the children were to see him, that would spell trouble. They would immediately start imitating him, and God only knows the confusion that would lead to. Marcovaldo tried to cover his tracks, moving along a zigzag course through the departments, now following busy maid-servants, now befurred ladies, and as one or the other extended her hand to select a fragrant yellow squash or a box of triangular processed cheeses, he would imitate her. The loudspeakers were broadcasting gay little tunes. The consumers moved or paused, following the rhythm, and at the right moment they stretched out their arms, picked up an object, and set it in their baskets, all to the sound of music. Marcovaldo's cart was now filled with merchandise. His footsteps led him into the less frequented departments, where products with more and more undecipherable names were sealed in boxes with pictures from which it was not clear whether these were fertilizer for lettuce, or lettuce seeds, or actual lettuce, or poison for lettuce caterpillars, or feed to attract the birds that eat those caterpillars, or else seasoning for lettuce, or for the roasted birds. In any case, Marcovaldo took 2 or 3 boxes. And so he was proceeding between 2 high hedges of shelves. All at once the aisle ended, and there was a long space, empty and deserted, with neon lights that made the tiles gleam. Marcovaldo was there, alone with his cart full of things, and at the end of that empty space there was the exit with the cash desk. His first instinct was to break into a run, head down, pushing the cart before him like a tank, to escape from the supermarket with his booty before the checkout girl could give the alarm. But at that moment, from a nearby aisle, another cart appeared, even more loaded than his, and the person pushing it was his wife, Domitila. And from somewhere else yet another emerged, and Filippetta was pushing it with all his strength. At this area the aisles of many departments converged, and from each opening one of Marcovaldo's children appeared, all pushing carts laden like freighters. Each had had the same idea, and now meeting, they realized they had assembled a complete sampling of all the supermarket's possibilities. "Papa, are we rich then?" Michelino asked. "Will we have food to eat for a year?" "Go back! Hurry! Get away from the desk!" Marcovaldo cried, doing an about-face and hiding himself and his victuals behind the counters, and he began to dash, bent double as if under enemy fire, to become lost once more among the various departments. A rumble resounded behind him. He turned and saw the whole family galloping at his heels, pushing their carts in line like a train. "They'll charge us $1 million for this." The supermarket was large and complex as a labyrinth. You could roam around it for hours and hours. With all these provisions at their disposal, Marcovaldo and family could have spent the winter there, never coming out. But the loudspeakers had already stopped their tunes and were saying, "Attention please, in 15 minutes the supermarket will close. Please proceed to the checkout counters." It was time to get rid of their cargo, now or never. At the summons of the loudspeaker, the crowd of customers was gripped by a frantic haste, as if these were the last minutes in the last supermarket of the whole world. An urgency, either to grab everything there was or to leave it there. The motive wasn't clear, and there was a pushing and shoving around all the shelves. Marcovaldo, Domitila, and the children took advantage of it to replace goods on the counters or to slip things into other people's carts. The replacements were somewhat random. The flypaper ended up on the ham shelf. A cabbage landed among the cakes. They didn't realize that instead of a cart, one lady was pushing a baby carriage with an infant inside. They stuck a bottle of Barbera in with it. Depriving themselves of things like this without even having tasted them was a torment that brought tears to the eyes. And so at the very moment they abandoned a jar of mayonnaise, they came upon a bunch of bananas and took it, or a roast chicken, to substitute for a nylon broom. With this system, the more they emptied their carts, the more they filled them. The family with their provisions went up and down the escalators, and at every level, on all sides, they found themselves facing obligatory routes that led to a checkout cashier, who aimed an adding machine, chattering like a machine gun, at all those who showed signs of leaving. The wandering of Marcovaldo and family resembled more and more that of caged animals, or of prisoners in a luminous prison with walls of colored panels. In one place, the panels of one wall had been dismantled. There was a ladder set there, hammers, carpenters, and masons' tools. A contractor was building an annex to the supermarket. Their working day over, the men had gone off, leaving everything where it was. Marcovaldo, his provisions before him, passed through the hole in the wall. Ahead there was darkness. He advanced, and his family, with their carts, came after him. The rubber wheels of the carts jolted over the ground, sandy at times, as if cobbles had been removed, then on a floor of loose planks. Marcovaldo proceeded, poised, along a plank. The others followed him. All of a sudden they saw, before and behind, above and below, many lights strewn in the darkness, and all around the void. They were on the wooden structure of a scaffolding, at the level of 7-story houses. The city opened below them in a luminous sparkle of windows and signs, and the electric spray of tram antenna. Higher up the sky was dotted with stars and red lights of radio stations' antenna. The scaffolding shook under the weight of all those goods teetering up there. Michelino said, "I'm scared." From the darkness a shadow advanced. It was an enormous mouth, toothless, that opened, stretching forward on a long metal neck, a crane. It descended on them, stopped at their level, the lower jaw against the edge of the scaffolding. Marcovaldo tilted the cart, emptied the goods into the iron maw, and moved forward. Domitilla did the same. The children imitated their parents. The crane closed its jaws with all the supermarket loot inside, and, pulley creaking, drew back its neck and moved away. Below, the multicolored neon signs glowed and turned, inviting everyone to buy the products on sale in the great supermarket.